on the side. They would just play the Contenders matches like on that evening and have gone on to have a lot of success. Let's see if that continues.
We'll see if Giant LYNX can find some success in their kind of rejig roster here. Romeo starting out on this May.
And this is interesting. We see this a chunk here, and unfortunately it's not paid out. This is just a good read by Nova MS. This is exactly how they actually addressed the May Goats in the past, was with a Doomfist, and once Caliber is very much a known quantity, chase it down as well means Nova MS have managed to execute on exactly what they wanted in this first fight, and we'll get the point.
And right away, Romeo's going to swap onto the Sombra instead, going to give it a little bit more utility, a little bit of counterplay against one's Doomfist specifically, but also we are in a patch where, look, Doomfist has been nerfed. It's not as effective as it used to be. We'll see how far one can get on that particular character.
Romeo around the side. One already finds one inside your God, though. Nexus Hacks does end up going down, so Romeo sort of pulled his weight a little bit there. Nova MS is still in a pretty decent spot with the stun on Chaser. They're going to really hurt him. Bubukar goes down in the trade, but Nova MS is still maintaining a numbers advantage, even if only a slight one. Giant LYNX aren't getting enough of a critical mass to actually get on the point. That may change with one going down.
We'll have to see, because Nova MS is still waiting for some ultimates here. The two members that do have them still getting back into play. Giant LYNX already used that Earth Shatter. Didn't quite get much out of it. It's already 30% plus, nearing 40 now. Waiting for the EMP from Romeo as well. They've started to shut down one, but they're going to do that more consistently.
Now another fight coming out. Rally already committed very early. Cut down on Rocket. Nice find by Crazy S. And now a Meteor Strike to come right down on top of Chaser. He takes big chunks and is forced way back. Nice grab. He catches a lot of members, but they're having a hard time following up. It's still only a 1-for-1. That's with the EMP laid on top as well. Now Earth Shatter. They don't even pick up kills off the back of that. This is just not looking hot, unfortunately, for Giant LYNX.
What you notice so far is Giant LYNX overall have been out-rotating Nova MS in the Ultimate Economy battle here. They're getting ults earlier. Graviton Surge is coming through earlier. Chase has landed 2 Earth Shatters now, for Nexus is 1. That still hasn't given Giant LYNX a win, though. The EMP even came down, hasn't given Giant LYNX a fight win. We're now at the 80% mark. And to be honest, Giant LYNX are no closer.
And they don't have the defensive ultimates to deal with this grab. This one's honestly a bit of a gimme. Tosses it right out into the team. Very easy clean up. Even with Nexus getting hacked, there was no real threat in his life. And at 90% as well, it's a very late fight loss for Giant LYNX, who might not realistically make it back to the point.
Potential staggers here as well. Romeo is super low, 3 HP. Needs a bit of time to get healed up, and look, one member's already down.
Yeah, it's not too hard. And Rocket does actually slip through there and get to the point. Panties as well with the Transcendence might be able to get there, but realistically, they're not stalling it out for anyone at this point except for themselves. The teammates are dead. Chaser now goes down as well, and that is going to be Nova MS completing the shutout.
What you do see from one specifically on the Doomfist is achieving the same kind of win conditions as last season when he was heavily playing the Doomfist in what was a far more favorable Doomfist meta, which is get those opening picks, have a lot of disarray in the backline of the opposing team. Giant LYNX consistently walk into fights 5v6 at the best most of the time, and then still having to deal with one while finding their own win condition on the front lines, which is why they get to use Earth Shatters, they get to use ultimates, but their team isn't in a position where their formation is settled and they can actually follow up on that. Their team is all over the place.
I also quite like how it feels like it's hitting specifically at the new members. You are going to have a lot of success targeting Chaser and Romeo with that Doomfist, and they are the newer members here. I mean, it stands to reason, right? So Giant LYNX out the door, instead on a more standard 3-3 with one this time out in the Sombra.
We'll see what one can achieve on this Sombra pick, because he needs to look for a flank, and this game is going a lot quicker than we've seen before.
Yeah, they got a hack on Chaser, but it's taking them a very long time to actually isolate him and finish him off. In that time, Nova MS actually took some hard casualties, but with the trade back on Saiyajin God, they've stayed in this fight now and are giving a bit of space such that they can regroup. The point is only just unlocked.
And this has been an adaptation from what we saw from Giant LYNX last week, where they heavily struggled against Sombras. This time around, they take the fight to Nova MS. They don't let one get an easy hack, and they are contesting, and they do get that opening cap.
Yeah, they got just enough of an advantage in those traded kills in the first skirmish to get the point, and now getting Oyo actually. Nova MS are going to have to let this one slide for a bit more time. They didn't really get the counter engage they were wanting. This is one really just trying to take some pressure off his teammates. Maybe get a back cap here. Probably not going to happen, though.
Yeah, it's just trying to allow his team a chance to get back and respawn, which is going to happen. But when you're getting to the stage where maybe a back cap could help you out, Nova MS just kind of need to regroup properly here. Nearly at that EMP, looking at a lot of ultimates coming online for Giant LYNX as well. It's going to be a pretty big battle. We'll see who gets in position first.
very telling that Nova MS have actually mostly charged up a lot of the same ultimates. The real difference maker, though, is the Bumbarapa nearly has grab, and Crazy's is still a long, long way off. But Nova MS are first up on ultimates, so here's a window. When are they going to go right in?
Penny's caught some big deals. Well, Bumbarapa stunned up. There should be a wipe.
Yeah, and this is ideal as well. Oyo is actually going to commit a Transcendence just to ensure that they can close out the fight. So it is quite expensive, and Nova MS are going to have their work cut out for them here because Giant LYNX have preserved those ultimates, but still they do get control of the point for a time.
And the macro here is good by Giant LYNX in that if they're going to lose like this, they want to get as many ultimates out of Nova MS as possible. Because they got that extra Transcendence, they still have ults like the Earthshed and the Graviton Surge, which is usually counted out by something like a Transcendence, which is no longer available for Nova MS. So Giant LYNX in a position to get a recap. They just need to execute properly.
Yeah, Nova MS are relying on two ultimates here, both of which are not actually up yet. Finally, the one they've come up right as Sergeant God gets a massive 3K, and it's a very clean retake from Giant LYNX. Exactly what they want to get with those ultimates they've preserved, and it means they hold on to not quite a lead, but still a solid number of ultimates for the next fight.
And they've only given up one fight so far in this night market. Nova MS waiting for that next EMP, which is trading places here. It's Giant LYNX coming in with some big ultimates, but then Nova now able to respond with some big guns of their own.
EMP is going to be the real humdinger for Giant LYNX to deal with. If Panties does not get caught in it, though, then that can help them out. They still want to hold on to something for them.
Does get caught.
Yeah, right in the thick of it, and is indeed the first casualty. That is exactly what Nova MS want in an engage as well. Very similar to how they actually won the last fight, where they got a cap back on the points. It's going to be the same thing again.
And to be honest, for Giant LYNX, that's 2 out of 2 now, where if Panties doesn't get caught in the EMP, he can use the Transcendence, can still save his team. Likely Nova MS then respond with the Graviton Surge, but that's still a 2-for-1 in terms of ultimate. That's still Giant LYNX going up to at least 99%. They're in a position now where, yeah, they can still come back and win this, but Nova are far better prepared this time around.
Yeah, Nova are executing on their win conditions very cleanly, and here's going to be that Transcendence in from Panties. This is a fight that Giant LYNX really need to win. Shatter out from Nexus is decent. There's the shatter from Chaser. Doesn't really get much. Forces a sound barrier though, and it's just a 1-for-1 for now. Now Chaser goes down, and things start to get a little bit rough. Look at this. Crazy S able to get so aggressive. So many kills on the board for him to boot. Sergeant God, he does slip out of that one alive, but that was a tough loss for Giant LYNX.
And Nova MS just needed to win a couple of fights in a row, get that snowball engine going. One now has the EMP again. Afterwards, Crazy S will quickly have a Graviton Surge. Giant LYNX are in a tough scenario. They've previously had a Transcendence out of Panties that couldn't get used. Now they don't even have that Transcendence to be used.
And here it is once again. It catches a good number of members. It actually doesn't catch Panties this time, but it's not as critical. They're just going to drill down the tanks first instead. Grab coming out of Bumbarapa and self-destruct from Sergeant God. Nice trade back. It actually pays off, and this is because the point is so nearly capped, but unfortunately, those last few members of Giant LYNX will suffer some deaths. They do not have the presence on the point. Nova MS, a little bit harder fought there on Night Market, but they are going to close out Lijiang Tower.
Yeah, so it's not going to be a map win just yet for Giant LYNX. Well, again, still searching for #1 there. Nova MS expectedly are going to come out ahead, but I do want to comment on the fact that, to be honest, it was a lot closer than we expected. Yeah. Based on Giant LYNX's performance last week, there should have been a lot more of a wash than it actually was, but what we saw specifically on Night Market was a very close affair. 93% for Giant LYNX, winning a lot of the fights in the actual GOATS comp.
The thing that really rescued that on Night Market for Nova MS actually was they got 2 very ideal EMP fights. And even then, the first one still left them at a deficit. It just slowed down the runaway lead that Giant LYNX were going to get. The second one was where they actually started to turn things back around, but that was still 2 very perfect engages that needed to happen. I would say that had less to do with Giant LYNX having problems and more actually Nova MS just committing very cleanly.
And it's a 2-part sort of adaptation required for Giant LYNX. First part is they need to understand how to deal with the Sombra in neutrals, which is kind of happening now. You saw that in those opening fights. One, not really getting the opportunity to get that flank around, the time just not being available for Nova MS, which is the kind of playstyle Giant LYNX need to adopt against something like a Sombra on the other side. But the second part now has to be, how do you deal with the actual EMPs? Because we are seeing other teams do a much better job of that, which is protecting your Zenyatta, making sure Transcendence is available. That just wasn't really happening for Giant LYNX, and that has to be the next step now.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the truth. But still very close, and that says promising things about Giant LYNX. We now move forward, of course, onto Eichenwalde, which is a hybrid map, and if you're unfamiliar with that, well, here's something to help you out.
Welcome to Eichenwalde. This is hybrid. 2 teams face off as either defenders or attackers. The attacking team has a limited amount of time to first capture a payload and then escort it along a set path containing 2 checkpoints. To capture the payload, the attackers need to stand within its range for a set amount of time. Defenders can delay capture progress by also standing in range. The attackers must work together to clear away the defenders. If successful, they score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. The payload only moves forward when an attacker stands near it. Defenders can delay the payload's movement by standing nearby. To get moving again, the attackers must clear away the defenders by force. If even one attacker is capturing the objective or on the payload when the time runs out, the game enters overtime. This extends play indefinitely until the attackers are either cleared away or they gain more time by reaching a checkpoint. Every time the payload reaches a checkpoint, the attackers score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. The round ends when the payload reaches the destination or when time runs out. Teams switch sides each round. Whichever team scores the most points and escorts the payload farthest wins.
So that's hybrid, and as it would seem, we are also going to Eichenwald this, so we'll have to see exactly how these teams are going to adapt for this one around. I am quite excited to see how Chaser and Romeo in particular are going to play on this one. Again, looking at how Lijiang went, despite it being an 0-2, started seeing a lot more potential out of Giant Lynx than we've ever seen this season.
I have to say, just snap judgment has been good things about Chaser. I feel like on the whole, actually, the only reason Control Center seemed so one-sided was just the Doomfist was in there. The Doomfist did just seem to throw Giant Lynx for a loop, but on paper, this is looking like a team that is at least prepared to hold its own. Whether or not that pans out, well, only time will tell. I've been to Germany, it looks exactly like this everywhere.
Yeah, including the destroyed buildings and the
all of it.
mix on the ground.
Thrones, practically every other building, honestly.
Vines, overgrown on the buildings.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
The Baldric in his suit.
Yeah, no, that's there. That's there. Any given beer hall.
Yeah.
Anyway, out the gate. So this is going to be Romeo flexing his chops a little bit on some DPS. Sergeant God on a Sombra as well.
Very important spot here by Sergeant God.
Yeah.
He sees immediately what Nova MS. First of all, what the composition is, but also just seeing the early positioning, getting that information over to the rest of the Giant Lynx squad as well.
So this is going to be the rotation from Nova MS coming out. Like we said, Giant Lynx do know what's coming, but they've rotated well against Afara anyway. It's kind of hard for Romeo to land some shots. Gets just enough rockets in to be about halfway to an ult.
And this is going to be a very interesting cat and mouse chase now. Giant Lynx are playing the mouse in this case. They have the fire. They need to poke down from range. They need to avoid the fight at all costs until the members of Nova MS are low enough to engage on.
Romeo's nearly coming up on a barrage. You ideally want to combo that in with the EMP, so Saiyajin God a little bit way away from that ultimate, but having that barrage in pocket gives them options. Even if it's only just to keep these members at bay, it's enough to crack through and get one. And that is going to have to give Nova MS some pause here.
And this is where Giant Lynx should feel a lot more confident about actually approaching. 6v5 is a lot more doable. One is starting to come back in. They can also look for a spawn camp against one as well, reset up the 6v5 scenario, and just waste Nova MS's attacking time as much as possible. One is coming back on Sombra though.
And I mean, wasting time is a great idea here. Nova MS are really far away from really any impactful ultimates aside from the sound barrier. Ubukar takes a hack. Oh, catch on panties though is really big. And they get Saiyajin God out as Nova MS decide to just push the go button and press on a pressure point of Giant Lynx, see if something breaks. Indeed it does, and they're going to crack the point based off that alone.
And honestly, that was a very good start from Giant Lynx, all things considered. Instant kill with that rocket barrage super quickly charged as well. It looked like they were going to be able to take Nova MS for a ride, but the only ride that's happening right now is this attacking squad on the cart as they push through in 1.5 attempts, basically.
Not a very good ride. Like if I went to Disneyland and that's all it was, just like, hey, let's just sit on a very slow car.
Have you know it's the primary ride on Blizzard World, but
well, okay.
It's their signature ride.
That feels like a tour bus more than, I mean, I guess this is a battering ram, but Giant Lynx taking the high ground, pretty stock standard. They've also stuck to the Sombra for the purposes of having that EMP, which is now available.
And I like to see how Oyo plays against this one. We've seen Panties get caught a decent number. Oyo, nope, that's the perfect counter.
Yeah, right in there. They still get a good chunk of kills through though before Oyo is able to save Bubuka and Jervis. So that's an advantage. Now Crazy S taking some pain. That Transcendence is long since off the table. And Nova MS actually accepted their fate pretty quickly there. I like the way that that you saw Sage and God just slowly drop down into the middle of the team.
I also like the way that despite the Transcendence being used, yeah, again, just couldn't save the team, right? Well, can't take responsibility for everything, I guess. The thought was what counts. And now for one, it's the EMP that's going to count for his next attack for Nova MS. They're looking like they're in a position where there's not really anything on the Giant Lynx to counter it. The only thing they have to consider is the high ground advantage is important. If the EMP comes up there, Nova MS can't actually aggress, so Nova MS are waiting for a fight where they can take it on the ground, which looks like it'll be happening soon.
Gosh, and one just had eyes on that the whole way through. That's the connection you want. Immediately onto Panties and is able to finish him off himself before the rest of the team is even really finished engaging. That is a pretty quick and clean gongs ring out. Yeah, it is still going to be a gong. And a very lean one in terms of ultimates as well from Nova.
And now setting up positioning to take this B point as well. Very early scouting just to see if anything changed here, how they're approaching. And for Giant Lynx as well, still don't really have any ultimates. Chaser nearly on an Earth Shatter, and he's going to need it.
Now this is going to be the point. Giant Lynx have to just kind of break out of this one. Hack on Chaser as he goes for the move. Self-destruct is so huge. And that was just in the closing microseconds of Chaser still being hacked and the shield not quite being available. Excellent timing from Crazy S.
A second team kill gong rings in quick succession as well for Nova MS. That's just a lot of ultimate charge for them. That's a lot of momentum gained for this push. And for Giant Lynx, nothing really happening on this defense. It's been two invisible defense plays back to back. They finally do have an EMP to play with, and it's gonna need to be big.
And Giant Lynx don't look as lost as they have in the past. It just feels like Nova MS have really ramped it up on them. EMP from Sage and God is going to have to be big. He does get it across. Only Romeo, sorry, no, a few more members than that, mind you. And it is a fight win. I looked at the wrong Sombra, don't tell anyone.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that, so that's fine. I don't. As far as I'm concerned, that was fine. But for Nova MS, they didn't have the Transcendence. Jervis obviously doesn't have a sound barrier, but look, that one's not the ideal counter for us for a EMP. So take that team wipe. The Sombra is now off the board for Giant Lynx as well. Straight goats for them. The 3-3 and for Nova MS. If this EMP isn't ideal, they're likely going to swap as well.
I think this is the first time that ultimates have felt relatively even, but that EMP is kind of the big difference. Nice reaction from Oyo and Panties both. Very ready on those ultimates. Means the EMP did not get a lot from one, and now Panties is actually the first casualty. So Nova MS, both teams just trading it back and forth. Crazy S is a very big loss to cop, but Chaser traded back means that Nova MS arguably still very much in this. Actually have a numbers advantage, but Giant Lynx with a closer respawn. Both teams just going to take a war of attrition on this payload.
And both teams just using all the ultimates here. One has another EMP now, and as the dust settles, we do see that Nova MS are getting that cleanup. That's basically a full team wipe yet again. They're able to finally continue pushing on through. 2 minutes and 36 remaining, and they have a couple of really big ultimates that can get that cart to the final destination.
The thing that's so insane to me is that one actually charged up another EMP in the course there. Giant Lynx barely survived that EMP and still actually lost that fight. So here comes the next one across. Not as big a connection this time around, but there's no Transcendence that could preempt or even react to it in this instance, which means the follow-up is pretty clean, and with the payload as close as it is to the exit, the Hail Mary from Sage and God with the self-destruct not going to clear Nova MS off the cart. It's a cap, and it's a pretty clean one at that.
Sometimes it's about the quality and not the quantity. No support ultimates available. Yeah, you can EMP them out, but not a required target anymore. What you do have to get is the tanks. You need to make sure the Ryan is covered in the EMP. As soon as that happens, you see from Nexus, free shatter for him, free cleanup for Nova MS. Aside from a couple of fights here and there, and a bit of a rough beginning, losing one super early to the fire as well, Nova MS weren't really opposed too much on that attack. You see that 201 on the time bank as well. It's pretty decent for Eichenwalde, which can usually stall out quite a lot, and C didn't really stall out much for Nova MS.
And I kind of commented partway through that. Honestly, right now, this feels like it's not Giant Lynx suffering from the same problems. This does look like a better team, I'm going to be completely honest. They don't look lost like they have in the last couple of weeks. Nova MS have just really picked it up since Lijiang Tower.
They're adapting super well as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at that opening section where Nova got a lot of confidence, and they start walking out. You can see the time and the space that one buys. So because one comes back as a Sombra, it wasn't really the expected from the Giant Lynx perspective. It wasn't their expected and a respawn for one. They maybe thought one's going to come back as the Zarya again, but because the Sombra starts coming into play, Giant LYNX, you know, they get a bit scatterbrained there. Their attention is divided. They think, oh, we got to look for the Sombra. We got to go after the Sky. Suddenly they lose pressure on that small sort of indoor section where the point is, and Nova are like, well, we get to walk out now.
Yeah, it was just a very smart play on the whole by Nova. Like, you've got to compliment just on that alone. It's creating an opportunity from nothing. And, I mean, you're not even necessarily doing that going, hey, let's do this to create an opportunity. You're actually just doing it because you need to get one back with the team. It just happens to create an opportunity. And capitalizing on that in the heat of the moment is the mark of a good team.
And the opportunity that's created is the forced error against Giant LYNX, who, to be honest, responded reasonably poorly. They kind of overcommitted to the Sombra a little bit, but as we start to get into now the next phase of play, it is Romeo back on the fire.
And actually off to a good start as well. It's the same kind of tactic, but this time the tables are turned. You see Nova MS again having to cower indoors, only this time it's on the defense, so Giant LYNX are just creating the space for themselves to sit on the cap point itself. It's already 1/3, and now with Bubukar cut off and killed, this is off to a good start for Giant LYNX.
And it's poor timing as well for Nova MS, unfortunately, because they're forcing the point now. Barrage is nearly into play, and we know how deadly that can be.
So the one thing they haven't quite been able to have, though, is that last little lick of follow-up to kill people like Crazy S, and arguably one as well. And actually now Bumbarapa has lost his mech, so this is Nova MS getting one back. But with the EMP and Rocket Barrage, Romeo quick enough to turn himself around as the Diva flies in his face. They have managed to get a good foothold on this. Oh, hold on a second. Nova MS, just out of nowhere, Crazy S shoots Romeo out of the sky with the Bunny Blaster. It's not out of the woods just yet for Giant LYNX.
And it turns out what you said was true, right? They're just missing that final bit of damage to clean up members. Yes, the Rocket Barrage comes through. Yes, the EMP comes through. But I'm slowly being reminded of how Lee Jung-Tao Control Center went, where Giant LYNX had ultimates, but they still could not get the win.
Well, off that, they did get 2/3, so now they just need to kind of finish what they've started, and they're already doing that. Pretty quick reaction, pretty quick recommittal here. And now coming into a chunk more ultimates. This time the minefield down keeps a bit more pressure. Cleared out, though, very quickly thanks to the help of that Transcendence. And again, DMEC on Bumbarapa means suddenly Giant LYNX lose a lot of that point presence that they need.
And the early advantage for Giant LYNX is kind of over as well. It's a really average Rocket Barrage this time because Giant LYNX were already starting to back out. They're already losing members. They only get Nexus. And I'm starting to feel like Giant LYNX are probably looking to swap here. Maybe we'll just finish using the EMP, and that should really be it, because Nova MS are really getting to the zone. 5 ultimates online from them. They're looking pretty unstoppable on the defense.
That Rocket Barrage felt like a Hail Mary that Giant LYNX did not need to throw out. If they'd held on to it right now, they'd be going into an EMP Rocket Barrage. That is a really solid combo, and they're still at nearly 2 minutes on the clock. That felt maybe an itchy trigger finger from Romeo.
Well, the assumption there is maybe you swap, because you're right, it didn't feel like a good ultimate. This might feel better.
Yeah, decent connection. They're able to, no, still don't quite finish off Crazy S. Again, they're not getting that last little lick of damage through. Finally able to force him to use the self-destruct, but he just remech safely. Now it's Giant LYNX again on the back foot. Never quite able to capitalize on the groundwork they're laying for themselves with these ultimates. Now they're probably going to suffer their toughest loss yet here on the offense.
And Giant LYNX are just running out of gas, so you can start to feel like they don't have the resources available. And Nova MS playing the 3-3 coach, they're just churning through that ultimate engine, able to continually charge up more and more ults. Now they have the Transcendence as well to block up damage against both an EMP and a possible Rocket Barrage. And for Nova MS, the win conditions here, use the Graviton Surge. Giant LYNX have no defense against that.
Now Nova MS, only really one fight away from closing Eichenwalder out. Getting that 2-0 start to the series that they are definitely wanting. They want a good, clean 4-0 in this whole series if they can so help it. That's
barrage has to be huge.
Out. Just waiting to commit this. There it is, the barrage through, but immediately drilled down, taking a bit of self-damage as Crazy S flew up in his face.
There's some space now. Graviton Surge does finally come through. As Nova MS looking for a couple of picks.
Yeah, the res was there on Romeo, but that actually just left Rocket vulnerable, unfortunately. Romeo does get back out of this one alive. Sajin God, big EMP, but they're struggling to follow up on it. Sajin God was too low to do it himself, and Romeo was so much of a distance because he was already still kind of in the death throes of fleeing that earlier grab, and now Nova MS just going to secure that last fight when all is said and done. A little unsurprising, I would dare say, but the almost heartbreaker is Giant LYNX are looking a lot better.
Yeah.
And so are Nova MS.
Well, the thing is, for Giant LYNX, they're looking much better than we saw last week, but unfortunately the competition this week is also much better than last week as well. So it sort of ends up being that despite there being an improvement for Giant LYNX. It's just not quite there. You can see in the results 0-2, 0-3. Eichenwalde a lot more one-sided than Lijiang was, and Lijiang felt a lot more winnable for Giant LYNX than this map.
And the thing is, this map felt... I mean, I kind of have to use the term winnable here, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I don't mean that like, oh, it was really close, they were one fight away. It was more like they were 5% away all the time, is what it felt like. You know, I mean, even just in capping the point, it was, you know, it was a good fight that got them 2/3, and it was 95% of the damage, but not the last 5% that actually gets the kill. Whereas the other side of that is Nova executing on all of those things all of the time. That ends up being the ultimate difference, and you expand that across an entire map. That's how you get a 3-0 result.
And the way I sort of describe that is Giant LYNX are very good at finding that first puzzle piece. They identify it very quickly. They put it down. This is exactly where it goes. Yeah. And then they have no idea where the next one is.
They've learned the first 3 moves of chess matches flawlessly. Can't close it out from there. Haven't learned the rest of the game.
And that's been a bit of a problem because the game goes on a lot longer than that. We can see it in the specific plays on Eichenwalde as well. Right at the beginning, we are seeing the fire picks come through, getting those kills, forcing the 6v5s, and then not being in a position to really capitalize on that and turn that into a victory, which is why, again, I have to refer to Lijiang Tower Control Center, because that was very much a story where even when they found the correct picks and the right ultimates, and getting those ultimates faster than Nova MS for the most cases as well, that's not getting them an actual win, and that's a big problem.
And like I said, even when it's just that last 5% of actually closing it out, you know, finishing what you've started, it's just not quite coming through. And like we said, the heartbreaker here is that they are playing against tougher competition. You almost wish this was how they looked last week in what, on paper, feels like a much more winnable match. They have other arguably winnable matches coming up ahead of them, but this is a very tough pool of teams. There are a lot of teams here that could argue their way into a top 2 finish.
Certainly a lot of teams in this group here of the 8 teams that are sort of roughly around the skill level of Nova MS, and even if they're not quite there, they're not too far off either. So it's a big hill for Giant LYNX to climb, and they're not done yet. They're halfway up that mountain, and they're trying to reach that summit. We are going to take a bit of a break here, but when we do come back, we'll see if Giant LYNX can make that ascent, or if they're going to fall in steps. See you after this.